What's up, everyone? Thanks for tuning in today. And I am so thrilled to be joined by a special guest, John Chapman of the 49ers Rush podcast. John, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
Man, I am exceptional. And mainly I'm exceptional. It's long-term exception because my team did not overpay for a non-premium position. This year is going to be a little rougher, and we're going to talk about it, I'm sure, but so glad to be on here with you guys. Zach and the 49ers Hive and all you guys, man, y'all have been just a beacon of light in the 49ers world. I love what you guys do on Twitter. Love your podcast. Just a big fan of what you guys do. So very honored and happy to be here today, man.
Oh, man, thank you so much for the kind words. That's awesome. So first things first, there's obviously, huge news broke. The Seattle Seahawks acquired Jamal Adams from the Jets, and they gave up a bounty, and we'll discuss that later. But my first question is, how do the 49ers now have to adjust offensively to facing what most people agree is the best safety in the NFL?
Yeah, I have Jamal Adams. I went through and did my positional rankings across all positions for the entire NFL, and I ended with Jamal Adams number one, safety number one. Now, a lot of people would argue Derwin James would probably be that if he would have played last season. But still, worst case scenario, the Seahawks got the first or second best safety in the league. So what does that mean for the 49ers? And I think, I kind of want to flip the question a little bit. You asked, how do the 49ers adjust to this? I think this is Seattle adjusting to George Kittle. We saw Arizona do the same thing. They go out with the 8th pick in the NFL draft, the Arizona Cardinals, and they go get a hybrid freak safety, Isaiah Simmons, that they can match up with Kittle. And that's exactly what Jamal Adams' job is going to be. Jamal Adams is a freak. He had the best coverage rate on 3rd and 4th downs in the NFL last year. I think that he is great. And so I think that this does make things a little bit closer between the 49ers and the Seahawks for this year. But I think long-term, it's definitely going to hurt Seattle eventually. But it does help them in the 2020 season. So I don't think the 49ers really need to do anything differently. It's just going to be fun, man. The Seattle game's always important. You go back to the first game we lost, against Seattle. We didn't have George Kittle. We get him the second time. We end up winning. And that's just going to be a blockbuster matchup for at least 2 games every season for the near future.
Yeah, and when this happened, I kind of tweeted out, this seems like a desperation move from Seattle. It seems like they know that gap is widening between them and the 49ers and maybe even the Cardinals. That might be a hot take, but they're at least neck and neck. And they went out and kind of, launched everything, threw everything at the wall and got Jamal Adams. And they better hope it pays off for them, because if not, that's going to be my next question for you. They gave up a lot to get him.
So they gave up a first and a third this upcoming draft for 2021.
So, yeah. Okay.
And then a first for 2022 as well.
That's what it is. Okay.
And so the overall haul is 2 firsts and a third. They get Jamal Adams in a 4th, and they also had to give up their safety, which
that's right, Bradley McDougall.
Yeah, who's a player. He's an average starting safety in the NFL, but he is a starting safety. And so whenever you look at this, take a step back, okay? Here's the issue. And this comes from Rich Kamini. He put this together. 8 players since 2000, the 2000 season, have been traded for multiple first-round picks. Okay, so let's go through some of these names, and we'll go oldest to newest. And I think this is a pretty fun, kind of experiment, because it lets you see how these have panned out in the future. Joey Galloway to the Cowboys. That didn't work out too well. Keyshawn to Tampa Bay. Didn't work out too well. Ricky Williams, that was awful. Jay Cutler didn't work out too well. Now we're getting into the 4 recent trades, and one of which the 49ers were in contention, and that's Khalil Mack trade. Now, they did have that one solid run where they had the great defense, but terrible quarterback play. It just didn't work out, and they kind of seem to be going the wrong way. We'll see what happens with Nick Foles. But then you have Laramie Tunsil last year to the Texans. Yeah, Jalen Ramsey, which has just completely devastated the Rams roster, and they still haven't signed him yet. And now we have this trade. And, given, Ramsey, Tunsil, and we'll have to see what happens with Jamal Adams. We don't know how those trades are going to work out, who benefits, who won the trade, so on and so forth yet. But all the previous trades did not work out. It benefited the team that sold the asset before the huge contract and got the picks. And we saw what happened with Jalen Ramsey. I mean, the Rams roster has been completely gutted. Now, the Seattle Seahawks do have some cap kind of maneuverability right now, but you're spending so much capital. Again, you're talking about quarterbacks, wide receivers, pass rushers, corners, and now we got a safety. Okay. I don't think that the safety position is near as valuable. He's going to be signed eventually for a $15 million kind of contract range. But I don't know, man. Zach, I don't think that they were a safety away from, being in Super Bowl contention. Yes, Russell Wilson disguises a whole lot of inefficiencies in this roster, which there are a lot, namely the D-line and offensive line, but they just continue to avoid those areas. And so maybe they're hoping Jamal Adams will be the Russell Wilson of the defense, where he can just cover up so many holes in this roster. I just don't see it long term, man.
That's exactly what this trade says. It says that Seattle came out here, said, look, we're safety away. If we have that star safety manning the back, our defensive backfield, we're going to be good. And it's kind of like everybody else is like, are we looking at the same roster here? You guys are definitely not a safety away. And it almost reminds me when the 49ers, they went out and got Nick Bosa, and then, they traded for D Ford. They were probably thinking correctly, I might add, we're a pass rusher or two away. Once we get that star pass rusher in here, get into the quarterback, we're likely going to have some success here. And I don't know what Seattle was thinking, but they're definitely not a safety away. Now, let me transition a little more into the 49ers and their front office. John Lynch is usually very active on Twitter. He tweets out a lot, whether it be, players' birthdays, just engaging with fans here and there. But we haven't heard from John Lynch since, I believe, mid to late May. What's up with his radio silence?
I'm not really looking too much into this. I think that, he's a really big family guy. And here's the issue. Okay. He's a big family guy, and they're about to go back in. Now, there's nothing anybody's been able to do, whether that's Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch, because they don't know the salary cap, which they just figured out the floor is going to be 175. So they went through and they signed all the rookies much earlier than the 49ers usually do. Debo signed, I think it was like 2 or 3 days before training camp started last year. All the rookies are signed. Trent Williams was reworked, all that kind of stuff. They're good. There's nothing else that they can currently do right now. So best case scenario is this. John Lynch is just radio silent, spending time with his family because there's nothing going on right now. He can't do anything. That's best case. But what we do know is that the 49ers were active on this Jamal Adams deal. I don't want them to trade for Jamal Williams. That would be terrible. But he was part of those negotiations. And, best case scenario is we drove the price up for Seattle. And so they won the Jamal Adams sweepstakes, if that's what you want to call it. But maybe we got more out of them. But the things that I like most about this front office with John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan is that they acquire on every single person. Whether it's a tight end, Le'Veon Bell, Austin Hooper, it doesn't matter. They're Odell Beckham. They're trying to get everybody, but they will not overpay. They have traded second, third, and fourth rounders for very quality starting talent. You look at, D Ford, Jimmy Garoppolo, you go get Emmanuel Sanders, Trent Williams, you go get all these different players, but you're getting them at bargain prices. They're not willing to trade first round picks in the future because they see how vital they are. They don't overpay. So I'm not really alarmed by the silence of John Lynch right now. I think the 49ers are just fine. And I'll even say this. I love John Lynch, and I'm glad he's our general manager. But if for some reason he decided to, hang up his cleats and go, so to speak, I think the 49ers would be just fine. I'm not too worried about, I think Kyle is kind of the decision maker. And if you listened to Kyle Shanahan, he was a guest on Chris Sims' podcast, and he basically said why he chose John Lynch. It was because John Lynch just missed competing. He wanted to compete and he wanted to go after championships. And so that's his driving motivation. I think it's still there. I'm not too worried about him leaving, but if he did, it wouldn't be the worst news. We have Adam Peters. We have a lot of experience in the front office. So it's one of those things. Take a deep breath. Yeah, the 49ers kind of front office is going to be just fine.
I've seen a lot of people on Twitter speculating, and I believe there was even a Sports Illustrated article out there that Kyle Shanahan could potentially become, like Bill Belichick, the head coach and general manager. And maybe there was some sort of disagreement with John Lynch. I know a lot of people have also said, well, Kyle Shanahan got this extension. Why isn't John Lynch getting his? And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, John Lynch is rather high up as far
Yeah.
as, salary for general managers. So maybe there's not a need for that. And, they also want to see how this year goes and proceed. So I agree with you. I don't think there's anything to worry about as far as John Lynch being silent. It's the time of the year where not much is going on. And I'm so glad you brought up all of those players that they acquired as well. D Ford, Emmanuel Sanders, Trent Williams, Jimmy Garoppolo, because just like you said, they will inquire about everybody. They want to make their team better in every opportunity they get. But exactly again, like you said, they will not overpay, one. And two, if they're understanding that they're kind of being taken for a ride here, and maybe they're just being used as bait for another team to get them, or an agent to kind of say, we're interested in multiple parties, they're not going to do that. They'll bow out as soon as they need to, from at least the outside looking in. So, great point on bringing that up, because I totally agree with you there. Now, speaking of Jimmy Garoppolo, the 49ers acquired him, and he was obviously Tom Brady's backup. A lot of people were saying, backups of Tom Brady never work out. No matter who it is, they almost never work out. Matt Castle, Jacoby Brissett. I mean, you can go down the list. Brian Hoyer. Jimmy Garoppolo seems to be a little different. I mean, last season he was like 22 yards, I believe, away from 4,000 passing yards, which is awesome. How does Jimmy Garoppolo take the next step this year?
I think that there's a couple areas that the Jimmy G haters like get on and are like, oh man, he's terrible. And I think turnovers are huge. I think that's a legit criticism. You look at the 13 interceptions, which everybody talks about, but I think what a bigger issue for me is 10 fumbles he put on the ground. His pocket presence is great. It's elite. But the problem is people can swipe the ball away fairly easily. And if you look at the games he lost, that kept showing up. So I think that's one of the areas where he can improve. Also deep passing, which, if you look at the completion percentage of 20 plus yards, where the ball travels over 20 yards or more downfield, he led the NFL in completion percentage with 75%, but he also attempted one of the fewest deep passes out there, also with Drew Brees. They just didn't throw it deep. So I think that's one thing, a little bit more aggressive play calling and getting through his rotations and his reads. But man, whenever you look at what he was able to accomplish, 4 fourth quarter comebacks, 4 game-winning drives, that's first and second in the NFL in both those categories. I don't know what else you want from this guy who's a 21-5 career starter. I mean, he just wins games and he gets you to the Super Bowl at his very first full season of starting, coming off an ACL surgery. If you told me we were going to get the exact same Jimmy Garoppolo from 2019 to the 2020 season, I would happily take it. You can win a championship with this guy, especially with this defense and the tools around him. And I think our offense got better this year. I think it's going to be much improved. So I don't want him changing any of his routine or any of those things. Perhaps protect the ball a little bit better. You fix just a couple of those things, and I think you've got a Pro Bowl, close to All-Pro quarterback already.
Now, I agree with you there. I think he does get a lot of hate unfairly. People criticize his work, and people for some reason will compare him to like Tom Brady or Peyton Manning in its prime. And it's like, let's pump the brakes here. This is a young, at least when it comes to NFL experience, quarterback, and he's still learning the system. He's still kind of getting used to everything. Coming off an ACL injury, he was relatively good when you put all those things kind of in perspective. Now, let me ask you this, John. Does he have an issue with decision making? Because we've seen him throw some completely boneheaded passes. And, I'm thinking of one specifically to the Cardinals where they were in the red zone and he threw it right to the linebacker. I mean, I'm not even sure what he was looking at. Does he have an issue with decision making, or do you think he's just kind of trusting his arm a little too much?
No, here's the issue. It's not so much even trusting the arm. A lot of the reads that they do in this offense, okay, he'll diagnose whether it's zone or man coverage on the outside and safety play. What he does do, and like you said, to the linebacker, talking about the Cardinals, you can go to the Vikings game. He does misread and kind of gets it wrong sometimes on a play action pass over the middle. So whenever they'll do a play action and the super hyper athletic linebackers that come up to stop the run and then flip their hips and turn and get depth, that's where he struggles. And whether that's, Seattle, the Cardinals, Minnesota, talk about the linebackers that he has those issues with, it's the same thing. Most of his interceptions are against those fronts over the middle, kind of that hook to curl defender. And so perhaps he trusts the system a little bit too much because, in Kyle Shanahan's offense, the play action is so important. And so Jimmy Garoppolo has to turn his back to the defense and then flip his head around and trust the process. But sometimes the linebackers kind of bait him into throwing those riskier passes. And that's where he's got caught with the kind of his hand in the cookie jar. And so one of those things perhaps you can improve on is just reading the linebacker. I think he's already got a pretty good awareness on reading the outside coverage schemes, but the linebackers seem to be tripping him up.
Okay, that's a really good explanation there because, sometimes you see those passes and you're just thinking, what is he looking at? But, great explanation. He's trusting the process. He's kind of going through his training, through his coaching, and, he's maybe getting baited. Now, one of his wide receivers has been getting a lot of hype specifically this offseason, and that's Kendrick Bourne. I mean, he's been posting videos of himself working out. Everybody's kind of posting his highlights. Myself, I tweeted out yesterday from the 49ers account. This account is now a Kendrick Bourne fan account because I really love Kendrick Bourne. How do you think that Jimmy Garoppolo can find him in such a crowded wide receiver room?
Man, I really do like KB, and his personality is it's magnetic. Kyle Shanahan talks about how he talks to his 9-year-old son the same way he talks to KB because they're so similar, and his play matches that. You won't see Kendrick Bourne make a play or even be targeted for a large part of the game. And then once it's a crucial third down or you're in the red zone, he's the primary target. He's a big play waiting to happen. Now, he does have some negatives. He did have 4 giant drops, all in crucial situations. And I think probably my biggest critique of Kendrick Bourne's game is yards after the catch, which Kyle Shanahan loves. He averaged 4.1 yards after the catch on the season, and that was 10th best on our own roster. That's not okay from a wide receiver in a Kyle Shanahan offense. But he does convert. He moves the change, which Garoppolo's better at than anybody else in the NFL. We didn't even talk about Jimmy Garoppolo leading the entire NFL in third down conversion rate at 50%, which is like 7 points better than the next quarterback. But Kendrick Bourne contributes to that. Now, if he can elevate his game to doing things with the ball after he catches it, knocking down those drops, especially whenever it's a big play, I think he's going to be starting week 1. So somebody's going to have to take the job away from him, which I love the competition factor with that because I think Kendrick Bourne starting week 1. I don't think Debo's going to be ready. So you put Kendrick Bourne out there, and then who's going to start opposite of him? That's a whole nother question. Do you put the rookie out there, especially with this offseason, which is crazy in and of itself? But it's up to Kendrick Bourne. And he's in a contract year, and he's playing for a big-time payday. And so if he could prove that he could be successful in this offense, I doubt he's going to be back for the 2021 season. I just don't think the 49ers are going to be able to swing a big contract for, a third or fourth wide receiver whenever they've spent so much draft capital on Debo and Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I agree with you there. I think it's kind of like a catch-22 as a fan of him because I want him to be successful, but knowing that if he is successful, he likely leaves after the season and goes to a team that can give him that pay that he deserves. Now you touched on,
real quick before we change page, this is amazing though. This is a undrafted free agent wide receiver who has played for pennies. He finally is getting something. I think he's making like $2.3 million this year, but he has made nothing to this point. And for him to go on and get a decent second contract, I'm all about players getting paid. He has put his time in. I'm pretty excited to see what he could do. And it seems like this offseason, he has been on his game nonstop. He's one of my son's favorite players. He follows him on Instagram and sees all of his stuff. So I'm pulling for him. And if that means he's got to go elsewhere, very similar to DeForest Buckner, go get paid, man. You deserve it.
Yeah, totally agree. It's, I want these guys to get every single penny they're owed in this league because the lifespan of these careers, the majority of these careers are so short. You want them to be able to make everything they can because I know a couple players have said it. the majority of them, this is what they're planning to live the rest of their lives on. Obviously some of them go elsewhere in their careers, go back to school, but most of them want to secure as much money as they can in financial security so that they can, just live their lives and take care of their families. But you did touch on Deebo Samuel there, and people are expecting him to at least be back, like you said. He's going to be injured, might not be back week 1. That Peter King report came out saying that he might be out until October, although he disputed it on Instagram. My question for you is, we've seen receivers like Dante Pettis totally flash at the end of their rookie year. Last 6 games, he was just on fire. And then Deebo Samuel, and Dante Pettis, he didn't really have much to do his sophomore year, unfortunately. How can Deebo Samuel avoid that sophomore slump, or do you think that it's inevitable?
No, I don't think it's inevitable, especially in a Kyle Shanahan offense. The big difference between Deebo and Dante Pettis is his entire success is predicated on superb route running and getting separation. Okay. And Dante Pettis continued to do that. The problem was at the catch point, he got scared. And the quarterback and Kyle Shanahan quit trusting him. And so, you go back to that one where it was like 3rd down against Seattle, I think. He runs a slant, I'm talking about Dante Pettis. The ball goes through his hands, and because he was going over the middle and the safety was coming, Jimmy Garoppolo turns to the camera. I don't think he did it on purpose, but he screams every effing time. And after that, we didn't see Dante Pettis very, very much. Now, you look at what Deebo does that makes him so special. It's toughness, and he's basically a running back from the wide receiver position. And so he doesn't – you can't take those things away from Deebo. He's going to be that tough SOB that gets all those hard yards. He doesn't get separation. That's not really who he is. He does run good routes, but he thrives on contact. He loves slants. He loves going over the middle. He loves the jet sweeps. You can't do that with Dante Pettis. Now, if we look at what Deebo Samuel did in the season, he had so many mistakes. It's easy to overlook the negatives that Deebo Samuel had because he's so explosive. 10 drops. He was leading the NFL in drops, I think, at week 13. 8 penalties. How does a wide receiver get 8 penalties? 2 fumbles. The kid had so many mistakes his, rookie year, but he was still valuable. If he can just knock out some of those mistakes, sky's the limit for this kid. There's nothing that can stop Deebo besides injuries. Peter King said he's going to be out till October. I think the earliest we see Deebo is probably that week 4 matchup. I think it's against the Eagles because I don't think Deebo even travels with the team to New York for weeks 2 and 3 when they play the Jets and the Giants. I think whenever they come home for that home trip, I think that's the first opportunity where Deebo could be ready to go. Jones fractures, they're no joke, which we know with Trent Williams from last year. But I think Deebo is going to be ready. He's young. Man, he is talking so much trash on Twitter. I don't know if you saw the post about Jamal Adams where he mentioned himself in the 3rd person, which I just love. Deebo's for real, man. His personality, I'm not betting against him.
Yeah, and everybody says Deebo's a dog, Deebo's a dog. And with all due to Dante Pettis, if Deebo's a dog, Dante's a cat, because it's the mentality and the physicality just isn't there. I couldn't see Dante completing that catch that Deebo had against the Cardinals where he's being mauled by 2 players and going to the ground and somehow caught it. Some of these plays are just unreal, and the physicality that he plays with, it's unmatched by most receivers in the NFL, if I had to say so myself.
Yeah, well said.
Now, yeah, thank you. Now, moving on to the NFL training camp that, thank the Lord, is actually happening. It was looking like it was iffy there for a bit, but it's going on. What are some big storylines that you yourself are keeping an eye on?
Obviously, you've got to be careful with the testing that's going on. Because here's the deal. If a bunch of people test positive on the same team, it's going to be trash. It's going to get bad quick. So we already had the quarterbacks, rookies, and injured players, and this is from Matt Burrows. 39 players have already come in for the initial test, and then they come back Thursday for their second test. And so the rest of the 51 players, they start that process on Tuesday. So obviously keeping track, hopefully, there's no outbreaks on the team and those things like that. But from a personnel standpoint, my 2 things that I'm most curious about is the right guard spot. I'm hoping Daniel Brunskill wins or Colton McKivitz. I do not want Tom Compton starting on an offense, but Kyle Shanahan loves people that used to play for him, so we'll see what happens there. And then also Tavarius Moore. I want Tavarius Moore to start getting some more play time and getting worked into the rotation with those safeties. The kind of formula for the Robert Saleh defense has been the 4 secondary players don't change. Whoever's starting today, you stay out there for every play. I want Tavarius Moore on the field. Personally, I would prefer him to be the free safety, and I would want to move Jimmy Ward to the strong safety spot and put him in the box. Now, I do think Tart deserves playing time, but I want playmakers at the safety position, and I think Tarvarius Moore is by far the best playmaking safety. Now, the 49ers did a huge disservice to him by playing him out of position for a year and a half, but he's had a year now in the system as safety, and I got to get that kid in the field just because I want turnovers. I'm greedy, and I think that this kid deserves a chance to play.
He's very, very intriguing. I remember Eric Crocker of Crocker Report, 4th and 9. He kind of did a breakdown of him a while back. And I'm like, this kid needs to get on the field. He needs to play. We need to see what he has. And the 49ers, like you said, kind of did a disservice to him playing him out of position. And then he kind of didn't look as great as he could have looked. So that's a great storyline to follow. And we obviously hope that he can get the job done. Now, the 49ers had a lot of valuable players, key players injured. Trent Taylor seems like he's been injured longer than he's played. Jalen Hurd flashed really, really brightly, and then unfortunately had that back injury. Jerick McKinnon's been dealing with injuries his whole tenure with the 49ers. There's a list, Who are you most excited to see return, and who do you think has the potential to be the biggest game changer returning from injury?
Yeah, I'll give you one on offense and one on defense. So first off, Jalen effing Hurd. I am the president of the fan club. I love this guy. I was super high on him before the draft. I actually, and this is maybe a slight against myself, but I want to be honest. I had Jalen Hurd ranked 2 spots ahead of Deebo Samuel in that wide receiver class before they were drafted. Now, when the 49ers drafted Deebo in the 2nd round, I was like, oh, man, no way we're getting Jalen Hurd now. We got Deebo. I love Deebo, and I think he's great and a perfect fit in Kyle Shanahan's system. Then that 3rd round, the next round pick was Jalen Hurd. And this is, this is when Dante Pettis was a good favor. They go get Deebo Samuel, the 2nd rounder, and they still went back to the well and got a 3rd rounder on Jalen Hurd. We saw how great he was in that Cowboys game, preseason game. He is exactly what Kyle Shanahan wants in the slot position. Trent Taylor was a plug-and-play guy, and I think that he'll probably be out there week 1 if he's healthy, Trent Taylor. But long-term, if Jalen Hurd is healthy, he gives Kyle Shanahan a freaking joker card that he could screw every defense up out there because you don't know if they're going to be a 3-wide set, if he's going to be used in the backfield. He's basically Kyle Juszczyk, but a wide receiver. And so I love Jalen Hurd. I cannot stress this enough. If he can play in this offense, he is going to be a dynamic playmaker, and he's just a highlight waiting to happen. Now, on the defensive side, I'm going with Ronald Blair. I love Ronald Blair out of Appalachian State, man. He was having a heck of a year, and then he tore his ACL whenever he was chasing Russell Wilson and still tackled him, by the way, in the open field, which was awesome. But very similar to Kendrick Bourne. He's playing in a contract year. He signed a 1-year deal to come back after his torn ACL, and I think that he's a guy that's just going to wreak havoc. I think that he could be 2nd or 3rd on the team in sacks. I'm a big fan of how he plays. He's very similar to kind of the Eric Armstead mold where he can play outside 5, he can play 3, he can play nose, he can do it all. So I'm pretty excited to see what he's going to do with this defense. And again, he's one of those players I don't think the 49ers get to keep after this year. And I think this is basically his audition for the NFL. And I think it's going to go really, really well.
2 fantastic players, a lot of potential there. That's really interesting that you had Jalen Hurd ranked that high. So obviously the 49ers, if they're able to get both of these guys to work out, that's just like the best case scenario. And this offense, I've said it already, it's likely going to turn from a run-first offense to more of a balance, possibly even more of an aerial attack. And that's saying a lot from a Shanahan offense. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself here, but I do think that we'll see a lot from these wide receivers. And Ronald Blair, a lot of people aren't talking about him. It's almost like he's forgotten because there's so many stars, so many key players on this defensive line specifically that Ronald Blair has kind of been an afterthought. But I'm so glad you brought him up because he has a lot of potential there. Now, let's move into kind of some fun rapid fire questions, John. Uh, you can answer with this with as many or little words as you choose. For the first one, if you could swap any player on the 49ers with any other player in the division, who would it be?
Oh, this sucks. uh, my initial thought is Russell Wilson, but I've just grown to hate the Seahawks so much. I'm not going to say that. I'm going to go DeAndre Hopkins because I don't hate him yet.
Oh, okay. That's a great answer. I like that.
I want to root for people I like. I love that the 49ers get rid of people that with domestic violence charges and the exact opposite of the Seattle Seahawks. I like that. Not that Russell Wilson is in that category, but I just don't want to root for him. I don't want to cheer for that guy.
Yeah, the corniness, I can't do it. I'm sorry. I just can't.
He's a great human, though. I'll say that. I just don't want to cheer for him on the football field.
Yep, same here. Next question for you. Can Fred Warner be better than Patrick Willis when Willis was in his prime?
No, I don't mean that as a slight or an insult. I love Fred Warner, and I think he's the best linebacker in the NFL right now. I really do. But Patrick Willis was special. And I think he had a good 4-year run where there was no doubt in anybody's mind he was the best in the game. I actually think, I know you told me to go short, but this is a problem I have. Sorry about this. I think Drake Greenlaw's ceiling is actually higher than Fred Warner's. And I truly believe the 49ers have the best linebacking core in the NFL. But if we're just saying ceiling alone, Drake Greenlaw, he has the highest ceiling for me out of it, all the 49ers linebackers.
I love that. I love that. A lot of people are definitely not saying that right now, so I love that take. Now, next rapid fire question. Who has the better rookie year, Brandon Ayuk or Javon Kinlaw?
Oh, Kinlaw by a wide margin. One, the wide receiver position from college to the NFL is one of the most difficult to make. That's why there's so many busts at wide receiver. Then you add to that, this offseason makes it even harder because there's no rookie minicamp. He's learning a new playbook, all those things. Also, Javon Kinlaw was one, drafted higher, and two, has a much better supporting cast. The best defensive line in the NFL still, even after trading away Buckner. He's not going to have to be the focal point of anything. He just gets to do one thing, and that's be a bullish 3 technique. And so it's just going to be so much easier for him. I don't think there's any doubt if Kinlaw starts week 1. He is starting week 1 if he's healthy. I don't know about Brandon Ayuk. I don't think that he will be. I think he'll get probably about 15 plays week 1, but that's going to be about it.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought up the supporting cast because a lot of people aren't really taking that into consideration when comparing the two. Javon Kinlaw's got absolute studs surrounding him. So he likely, just like you said, will have the better rookie year out of the two. This next one's definitely more of a fun question. Out of George Kittle, Nick Bosa, Eric Armstead, and Mike McGlinchey, pick one to team up with and fight the other 3.
Oh, so it's me plus?
Yeah, you plus one guy? Of them fighting the rest.
Oh, that's what's up. Man, I don't like these odds at all because that's 2-on-3, but that's okay. I'm going Mike McGlinchey. I'm a size and a weight guy. So that 6'8", 300 plus pounds. He's got the reach. My second choice would have been Eric Armstead again because of the size, but he's so kind, man. He's too nice. Give me Mike McGlinchey in the Fighting Irish, and let's go at it.
That's a great answer. Yeah, when I was typing that question up, I'm like, you got to go with size. I would go with size, but yeah, definitely.
Man, I don't want to punch George Kittle though. That's rough. I'd take him to the ground and grab. I'd probably try to get them to tap out, which I would be completely destroyed in a matter of seconds versus any of these fine-tuned athletes. I mean, if I sleep wrong, my neck hurts the next day. So yeah, it'd be fun. It'd be fun. I think we could raise some money on pay-per-view for that to watch everybody beat up John Chapman.
There you go. Yeah, definitely. We'll get it going. Last rapid fire question for you. Is a hot dog a sandwich?
Oh, yeah. I'll say this. It shouldn't be a sandwich. But if you buy the cheap ass buns where they split on the bottom and then you have to like hold it, vertically to make sure the hot dog doesn't slide out either way, then it becomes a sandwich. So I'd say only if you buy the cheap buns. I think a sandwich has to have 2 separate pieces of bread personally. One folded does not. That's basically a pita or something like that, like a Hot Pocket. It is not a sandwich. Definition wise, I don't think it is. I just really don't. Did I fail? I think I failed.
Either way, that was a fantastic breakdown of what makes a sandwich and what doesn't make a sandwich.
You can't buy cheap buns, man. You got to get the real buns. And whenever I was growing up, we just got one. You just got the bread. You got the crappy, the bread. And so you only got one piece of bread. If you're making a sandwich and you grab one piece of bread, you're just making a tostada. Like, that doesn't even count. You got to have 2 pieces of bread. That's just what it is. So, boom. Case closed.
I was going to say, this seems a little personal for you, but
just saying, RIP my mentions. Come at me.
All right, John, thank you so much for joining me today. That was a blast, guys. Make sure you follow John. His Twitter handle is below on the screen, and make sure you check out the 49ers Rush podcast, available on all platforms. Thanks, John.
Thanks, man. Really appreciate it, Zach. Appreciate it.
Thank you.